So I think, in the current generation compared to previous ones, people have just got a lot less confidence in themselves. And this is right now. So what's going to happen in the future because of social media?
Antibiotic resistance is a way bigger issue than people are making out. And nobody's doing anything about it as well.
This whole thing right now of like greenwashing, where companies, big companies, jumping on the bandwagon of like, we're eco. I'm just thinking of Coca-Cola, for example.
So, for example, there's ideation and embeddedness that there will be a technological solution to climate change, that with increasing innovation, there's some way we could prevent these things. However, this only leads to further growth, industrialisation, capital development. The belief that we can continue to grow and it can be green. We're not going to continue damaging the environment. But the very concept of continuing growing will increase the extraction resources and the increasing pollutions. So
the example I like is the whole Apple ecosystem, which, I've never been a big fan of that. But I think that's what's going to happen is that to a slightly more extreme level is that people are just going to be gobbled up into ecosystems. And I think we're going to see a lot more ecosystem-focused ways of operating businesses. So, you might even have just like ecosystem wars, which sounds a bit crazy to be honest. One of the big problems we have right now in terms of infrastructure is that a lot of people are starting to lack of space, which is why people are looking elsewhere. But people are trying to build higher and higher. And, there's talks about building underground as well now, which is crazy to be honest.
Right, so in the Victorian period, an author called H.G. Wells wrote a book called The Time Machine. And it's basically this bloke makes a time machine and travels to the far, far future when capitalism has reached its zenith and has become its purest form and has kind of started to decay. And in this book, you have two tiers to society. You have the humans who live on the surface and the humans who live under the ground. And what happens in this book is that these humans have lived underground for so long that they've effectively become like monsters effectively that can't actually even exist on the surface anymore.
I remember during lockdown, the first one, I had such a great anger for capitalism. I just remember following this communism page as well. Graphics are really cool, so it just looked really cool. But then now that I look at it, it seems kind of hateful. I guess the more I absorb, the more I feel like systems are always gonna be fundamentally not for everyone. Buddhism does have its benefits, the benefits of raising people out of poverty and giving access. Well, with all this stuff with the metaverse and everything, I don't really understand it personally.
Pretty much what metaverse could be, where everybody just goes into this virtual reality world where you can literally do anything. You can shop online.
For example, Russia's use of bot farms to tamper with elections, to spread social divisions in our societies.
Actual gamers, they're going to military right now because they can actually control an airplane without a pilot.
Do you know the Betty Boop? There's Betty Boop black and white videos, and you can get compilations of them on YouTube of all the clips, and they're very surreal. But there's always some sort of baddie in the picture, and Betty Boop's always trying to escape them. And yeah, it's just they're really weird and they're really creepy, and I feel like we're all Betty Boop.
I've just been to one of the Van Gogh exhibition. I'm going to say the bedroom one because he's painted it 3 times and each time it's different. So if you think about that with the future, it's got those different pathways, and each time you think of it is different. And I guess it's the things which have happened to us, like what we've said with social media, whether that's impacted on how we view things. The perspective that he's drawn it with changes. So. And how he's feeding out the colour, each time someone says something to me, that's how that changes. Even after this, who knows what I'm going to think about, what's going on.
So there's a really interesting piece of artwork, I think it was in Berlin that I saw, and it was a canvas, it was a tapestry, And from left to right, the colours, it was very colourful, I think it was a market scene of some kind or a city, whatever, and it was in colour on one side, and it gradually progressed into sepia on the other. The fact that the world becomes increasingly less diverse, becomes more of a gestalt of different beliefs, ideas and systems, which is really good in some ways, but also reduces those individual things that make us who we are.
There's a modernist piece of artwork. It's a guy, it's like a person on a bridge and they're like screaming. But yeah, I think I relate to that, and I think a lot of other people relate to that, this kind of internal kind of scream that you have and just stress about everything, which actually isn't really ever expressed. I mean, people have always been stressed, but I feel like in today's day and age, people have internalized it a lot more. I guess probably the thing that comes to mind first is the screen painting. You know, the Larry's.
Yeah.
Because I think I read somewhere recently, he's looking at something behind the painting, and we don't know what that is. We don't know what he's so afraid of, and I guess that's kind of the way I look at the future. It's quite unknown, but I know it's a scary concept, you know.
Yeah. Can I say something that contradicts how little faith I personally have in the human race? But I watched a documentary recently called The Rescue, about a couple of years ago, a group of 12 young Thai boys were stuck in a cave. The documentary gave me a glimmer of hope of what kind of there are good people, you know, this advancement in technology, first of all.
I do like the meme, This Is Fine, where you've got this sort of cartoonish dog in this house on fire. Because it gives you some sense of positivity, even though everything surrounding you is just hell, pretty much. Yeah, you're conscious of what's happening, but you just try and stay in some sort of bubble and focus on yourself.
Okay. A recent documentary about Afrofuturism. The basis is that you look at the past and you reimagine it. In their context, they imagine that the slaves that were thrown off ships to have rebuilt a new society underwater, and that they have power of their past and their future. I really like the recontextualization of something horrible that has happened in the past.
It's human made, but at the same time, it's a person. It's like a DJ, basically, music producer that plays with synthesizers and then edit some sounds and do those weird stuff on a keyboard or whatever on a computer. But then it's all at the end. It's a cable that is connected to the speaker, and it's electricity. It's very technical sounds that is coming from vibration, from actual vibration. Yeah, I feel with techno, it's a sound of the machine itself. It's the birth of the emotions of the machine. Stuff like that.
So this is the best example I have of a form of speculative art.
Mm-hmm.
I don't agree with what it's suggesting. I need to make that clear from the start, but I'll explain why as I go along. It was part of a collection of works that were called Life Support. This one's called Respiratory Dog. She's not actually had this operation for this to work. The tubes are fake.
Okay, so that's what's speculative about it.
Yeah. It's not actually real. They've not figured out the science to be able to do this. They're just thinking about doing it. Currently, medical practices to be able to put energy into all the machines that it takes to allow people to breathe and things like that. That's a lot of energy consumption.
Yeah.
And obviously, we want to prioritize people's health. And I'm not saying we shouldn't.
Yeah.
In any way. However, it's not very ethical at all.
Yeah.
There's a little rabbit here. The idea that if the dog would run faster because the rabbit's there, so the dog would need to run faster if she lost more breath.
It's not practical, I think.
Because it looks so real, I genuinely thought it was real.
I think the fact that the artist, that this is done as a photo as well is quite interesting. Whereas paintings or drawings are done on a canvas and can bend reality a bit more, whereas I think photography is always that step ahead into reality.
I think it's interesting visualization because you're looking at the actual apparatus, it looks more like an iron lung, which use negative pressure, so it pushed your chest in and out. Whereas the more modern ones use positive pressure, they force air into your lungs. So just like, it's interesting, you've got the old technology with like the clean, modern, minimalist.
It could be even like a human being you don't know. Like you could be attached to another human and be relying on them.
Maybe when dogs run, they could generate energy in a battery, and then they could use the battery for her to breathe. So there's other solutions probably.
You know, the degree I do, I know that scientists like to prove that they're right, and they can be ironically quite close-minded because of that. Definitely artists have a different look at life to scientists, so working together,
I just think like art in a weird way is the brains, because everyone thinks that it's not. I feel like the artists have these concepts that might seem daft like this, but it might make like scientists or whatever to start thinking about things that we could be doing in the future. I feel like there's a very blurry line between normal day-to-day things and art. Say my art was vegan activism based, and it's almost like people forget that it's art because it's just a diner, whatever, it's a kitchen. It can't be maybe the thing that we absolutely heavily rely on.
One of the things that came to my mind immediately, this person that asks an AI, an artificial intelligence, to sort of draw or build this completely new image of what it thinks a certain word means based on its access to the internet. One of the sort of topics this person did was throw different mental illnesses. What was interesting is to see the comments below and how it helped quite a few people who were suffering from these illnesses have a visual representation of what they suffer from. I think it's the idea of control there, where if it's not human and it's beyond your control, that's when you get afraid of it.
Kayaki Goni, she did something called Data Garden. So she started talking to these scientists and the experimentation, and they were saying that you can actually transfer your data 110 to DNA data and then put it inside the plan, and then it stays there forever, but you can't retrieve it. So this is like a transformation between imagination and reality, and where it could actually happen, you know, where Alice in Wonderland becomes real.
One of my favourite sci-fi characters is a bloke called Thrawn in Star Wars. Blue-skinned alien, and it's really cool because he deals with alien species he doesn't necessarily know, but looks at what artworks they have. They value this, they look for colours, look for shapes. Great workshop where you say, how do you communicate with an alien? You say, I'd say this. Oh, so you assume they can hear then?
I mean, this makes me have kind of faith in playfulness and improvisation. In my drawings, I'm kind of trying to put myself in the body of a child or the mind of a child. Yeah, that's a great way to make connections between ideas that probably haven't been connected before. Like I'm thinking about this book called Jazz and Physics. He has found, discovered things in physics that have come from something within jazz, like a certain theory or a certain way of improvising that just totally matches the equation.
I studied all about slow violence by Richard Nixon, violence which is done against communities or groups, but it's hidden violence.
It was run by the MOD's Future Threat team. They did 30 or 40 pieces of artwork chosen from a variety of political, religious, ethnic backgrounds. They use artwork to define our assumptions, looking at different cultural communities and how they perceive the threat. So, for example, if you look at a lot of work by African American artists in the United States of America, their perception of equality and justice is one of their biggest concerns now. Big capitalism neglects them. It's really interesting that we choose one or two or three pieces and go, that's how the world should look now. Discrete communities have their own way of viewing the world. And I don't know how you make up for that bias.